Ladies and gentlemen, that's Joji's new album, and although it could use a redacted version of the track list, great atmospheric moments of bliss do live here.
I got you, man. Hello world of YouTube, and welcome to another episode of Redacted, the show where I take a look at records that have a solid foundation but a spotty execution, and making a smoother listening experience out of it. And this month, because it's February, because while some people are living it up and their life's a love, and you know, just generally loving the camaraderie of their partner, there's also a place for sad boy tunes, especially one so wrapped up in emotions with relationships. And I figured I would take a minute to sort of give those folks something to sort of lavish in, you know, while I'm personally loving my life with my partner, love everything going on there. I used to be that guy. I used to be a sad dude. I've had long stints where I've been single, so I can relate to that. And plus, it gives me the chance to do a newer record and an artist that I've covered on this show before, but doing a less ambitious approach than I did the first time I covered this artist. Because while I liked a lot of the improvements the artist made with this record, even in my initial review I said that it was bloated as fuck and could have used one of these, and so I'm doing it today. I'm talking about the sophomore outing from the internet's favorite sad crooner boy, Joji, Nectar. Now, if you want my full thoughts on Nectar as a whole, I'll link my review in the description, but I did bring up, I had issues with a lot of its pacing, especially near the tail end. I thought it was really bloated. I thought that while it started off on a really good foot, it wasn't necessarily its best foot, and today, my biggest goal with this Redacted was to just make it a perfect flowing experience. Unlike when I did a combination of Pink Guy and Ballads 1, which I think was like the third or fourth episode of this show, I figured I would just do a straightforward trimming and rearranging of the track listing here to give it just a good vibe. Generally, I wanted to keep the vibes in check. You know, I wanted to make the flow the biggest focus of the record, and I feel like I did a great job at that. You know, I also did trim the fuck out of this record, because my version of Nectar is only 40 minutes and 13 tracks, which is still a lot for a 40-minute runtime, but I kept the tracks I did for a very good reason, and I'll get into that after I break down the track listing right now.
If you've been waiting for falling in love, sun's up, I don't really want to fight the daylight. Hope this is the hardest part we tried. We could pretend we're normal people, and I can repeat those times. Won't you give me love, give me love, give me love. Teach me to love, just to let me go. High hopes, and the heart make me wanna sing song. And the pain on me, feeling your touch and I'm feeling so sweet. Blame it on me, you can diamonds, so lost in this paradise, no speed. The sun is not the brightest thing, the choir sings. I know you're not in love like you used to be. They don't love me like you do. Those chicks.
Now, like I said in my review, and like I said up at the top, I don't think Ew was a bad starting point for this record, but you had some good starters in the form of some of the singles that dropped before this project was even a thing, and Sanctuary was the first single, and I feel like sets a good stage for the record. You know, I feel like it's the most bright, if that's the right phrasing, track on the whole project, and sees Joji just wanting love, just fiending for love, which is the general mission statement of the project, but it even feels like he's treating his love like nectar, you know, something to fawn over so intensely. And I feel like, again, it's got the theatrics of a good starter. It's also just a really catchy-ass tune with a great hook that, I mean, again, was the first taste of this record, even if we didn't know it at the time, but I still feel like is a great stage setter for the project. And normally, there's like one or two instances on a Redacted where that transition to the next track is just so good and is why I do this sort of thing. But there's a handful of them across this project. Hell, the run through the first half of this project I think is full of them because Sanctuary into Daylight, incredible transition. And I feel like I wanted to have a kind of good, like I talk about with Redacted, it's a good 1-2 punch with 2 lead singles for this project that have great hook work and just generally fit the vibe of the record. Sanctuary is about grand theatrics, and Daylight is about a tight groove, even if its chorus does get that as theatric as Sanctuary. And I love Daylight. It's probably my favorite track on the record. You know, I really loved Sanctuary when it dropped, but I love Daylight, and I love the hook of Daylight. And it, again, kind of propels some of the lyrical threads and some of the moods that the album goes for. And from there, we kind of settle into another groove with MODUS. You know, it's a track that, again, has a sort of grand chorus, but not quite to the same capacity as Daylight. It's something of a similar ilk that I just kind of wanted to put there as a good point to just carry the groove and the momentum forward. That I continue to make a little more low-key with Normal People, the track that has the most normal propulsion that the track goes. Again, it's another track to just kind of hang in the vibes, to just kind of hang around in this sort of tepid atmosphere. You know, again, continuing to lull down from the grand theatrics. It's another just good, catchy track that is, again, continuing those lyrical threads that the record goes for before ramping up the energy a little bit with Gimme Love. Another great single that has another really good hook that, again, sort of in the beginning half throttles the listener a little more, gets a little more active, propulsive, but then again, in its second half, it dwindles down and melts away, and actually might have my favorite transition across this whole project from it into Ew, which I use as a poignant point to transition from the sort of propulsion in Gimme Love and sort of the subdued nature that it and Normal People's hooks had into another grand, bombastic moment. And Ew, while like I said, was a good choice for an opener, it's still a great track. And so I wanted to include it. I just needed to find the right pocket to put it in. And I feel like after the calmness of Gimme Love into Ew's calmness, it's a good transition. And then I sort of, from that point, bring you into a streak of sort of more just vibey, again, sort of not focusing on grand theatrics tracks with High Hopes and NITROUS and 777. 777 has a little more of a bigger hook, but these tracks are all about just having a tight hook, but not, you know, necessarily indulging in the lushness and lavishness that a lot of what you've heard before already has, you know. Hell, NITROUS might be the most low-key cut on the project, and I kind of use it as the last of its sound before ramping up the energy a little bit into 777. 777 still has a little bit of a less low-key, or a little bit more of a low-key vibe, like High Hopes and NITROUS, but it's ramping it up a little more, you know. High Hopes and NITROUS are kind of a nice little lull before getting you back into some energy with it, and Afterthought, which is a great, again, collaborative track that I use to sort of, again, maintain the energy from 777 before really ramping it up even more with Reanimator, which is a track that has this great intensity within its sounds that, again, I just want to kind of use to build. I'm building up because Run is the penultimate track on the record. It is the ultimate climax, you know. I said I wanted to start with either Sanctuary or Run, and I ended up settling on Run because Run, while Reanimator has this big crescendo, it still kind of fades out before Run has one more big ramp up. It's a great, you know, it's a point that I wanted to use as a good emotional, poignant piece. You know, as far as lyrically, you know, a lot of the stuff that's happened before that has been, you know, still relationship driven and really delving into the emotional side of that sort of coin. And Run is a good accented climax to that. It's a good point where all of that building up that's happened over the last couple of tracks reaches a good apex. When that guitar solo hits, given it happens at this point in the record, I feel like it's a lot more emotionally resonant. It comes as a good release from what the last couple of tracks have had going on build-up wise. And that's why I put it as the penultimate track on this record. It's still it could have been a good opener, but when I was pulling together this project, I was really happy about this moment because you've had these tracks that sort of keep building you up. Not much of a release, just kind of ebbing and flowing a little bit before that big compression with Run that lulls you into Like You Do. It's a great closer, and it's sort of a good sort of, again, opposite side of Run. You know, running away, you know, you should run.
But now that you're gone and you're out of the experience that we've had trying to be normal people, you know, feeling lucky with 777 or playing that coy, are we dating in a public sense? Before reflecting and realizing that no one will really love me like you do.
This feels like a good conclusion, a good resolution, a good point for the record to reach a resolve, to me personally. You know, all of it's still very vibey. Like You Do still has a really good chorus, but it doesn't have the same scale that Run had. Again, it's a good resolve, and I feel like that's why I still had to close it on this track in particular. And that was my Redacted on Nectar. Now, the tracks that I did scrap, I scrapped because ultimately I feel like they either didn't hit the emotional core of the record as hard as the tracks that I kept, or they just didn't do as much for me, like Upgrade, or Pretty Boy, or Mr. Hollywood, or Your Man, which is the actual closer. I thought Love, Like You Do, was the closer, but I guess Your Man was so much of an anticlimax to me that I just scrapped it off the record proper. But yeah, that was my Redacted of Nectar. What did you think of this Redacted? Did you like it? If you do want to hear it in full, it is linked in the description through Spotify and YouTube. I actually am really happy with this Redacted. When I made it, after saying that I was going to do it in the listening log update, I was really pleased with this. This is a version of a Redacted that I actually have been spinning a lot in my free time, even recently, even, you know, prior to prep for this. It's just one that I'll throw on because I feel like it's concise, it's tight, it hits its emotional points, it has some good build-ups, it has some good payoffs, and I'm happy with it. But I'd love to know what you thought of it. Leave those thoughts in the comments down below. If you liked this video, be sure to give it a like. If you want to see more of my music, gaming, and general nerdery content, be sure to subscribe. Special thanks to my patrons. If you want to join their ranks to get early access to content, exclusive content, or to help drive the community, it's linked in the description. I'm going to get out of here. I've been Viral Rack. You guys are getting lives and situations, and I'll see you another day.